Hey everyone, I'm Mecha, and I'm going to talk about something that's been bothering me for a little bit. I've got an FE4 Sigurd solo, sort of, in the background if you want to watch some gameplay in the meantime. I figured playing FE4 would give me all the time I need to get my point across. Of course, all of this is going to be just my opinion, and whether you agree or not, you're welcome to let me know in the comments. If you've been around on the Fire Emblem subreddit, then you're probably familiar with this joke that's been popping up a lot in the last few months or so. But even if you're not, you've probably heard of the idea that the Fire Emblem fandom, or certain parts of it at least, are really negative about Fire Emblem or certain parts of it. For example, there's the caricature of the elitist old scumbag who praises Kaga for everything he does, and resents anything resembling modern Fire Emblem. And while the subreddit mostly does it jokingly, it still irks me every time I see it, because I think it's giving what I think a really great fan community a bad name. It wouldn't get this many upvotes every time if at least some people didn't think it was true to some extent, you know. Jokes usually need to be based in truth in order to resonate with people. But how negative is the Fire Emblem fandom really? The places I visit, which is the subreddit and a couple of Discord channels, they're perfectly fine and for the most part positive, with the negative aspects generally ignored or buried in downvotes. My own comment section on YouTube is usually pretty cheerful, and the most popular Fire Emblem YouTubers have a pretty positive outlook on things, but I do think there's parts of the fandom that could be seen as negative, but I prefer to use different terms for it, being divided and critical. And the former should come as no surprise. The Fire Emblem fandom, like most video game fandoms, has many different groups of players, and sometimes they butt heads a bit. You've got differences between like old school fans and people who found the series through Awakening or Heroes, casual players and hardcore players, players who are in it for a story or characters, and those who are in it for strategy. I'm purposely using and instead of versus because I think bickering over what way to enjoy the games is kind of silly. I've said many times before, but everyone likes the games for their own reasons and in their own way, and you can't really play the game wrong unless you're a certain Balt Norwegian. I've always tried to be very clear about this, but just in case, I don't hate casual players, but I do get annoyed by people spreading misconceptions or misinformation, and I like helping people who want to get better, which is why Fire Emblem Pitfalls exists. I think 90% or more of the fanbase would find this agreeable, and is generally off doing their own thing in their sub-community with no harm done. Very, very few people are out there unironically calling others like awakening babies or scrubs with high turn counts or whatever. So, both the fandom and the series are very diverse. Every Fire Emblem game is different, especially if you compare the very old ones to the very new ones. And whether you like it or not, the newer games, by which I mean Awakening and any games released after it, especially those, are very different from what Fire Emblem seemed to do before. You can call it whatever you want, but the core word is different. The series has changed to have a broader appeal, and as a result, it attracts people that might not have liked Fire Emblem as it was before. And inversely, the people that enjoyed Fire Emblem the way it was might not like the new games as much. A lot of them will enjoy both of course, but not all of them. This line of logic has nothing to do with elitism or casual playerness or whatever. I'm basically calling Fire Emblem a shop that one day stops selling apples and the next day sells pears. Some people like all kinds of fruits, some only like apples, some only like pears. Besides divided, a portion of this fanbase has also become very critical. And with so many different tastes, you've got a lot of different kinds of criticism. Almost every Fire Emblem game can be criticized or praised for something, again because they've all got so many different pros and cons. So unavoidably every game gets nitpicked apart every once in a while. Usually the game that gets nitpicked the most is the newest one. Naturally, Awakening and Fates were, well, easy pickings, because it's very obvious what it's lacking in, but Radiant Dawn and Blazing Blade have also been scrutinized several times for their story elements, but it's also easy to find design flaws in some of the, like, Kaga's games, which is the older Fire Emblems, of course. But don't mistake the existence of criticism of every game of the fanbase as a whole. I'm miswording this a little bit. Basically, don't mistake the existence of criticism of every game for the fanbase as a whole hating on every game. It's different portions of the fanbase doing this. The people that love Radiant Dawn might be the people that hate Awakening and vice versa. It's like a room full of people, each of them liking and disliking several titles, and as a result it might kind of sound like there is hate for every game. And the criticism often doesn't even encompass every element of a game. Someone might just hate the story of Awakening, but they still like to play it. They might really dislike Camilla's overt fan service, but like the skill system of Fates. And usually this criticism is not born from wanting to hate on Fire Emblem, but it comes from really liking the series and having high standards for it. And you know what, I am totally on board with a fanbase that's actually critical of a franchise. I much prefer this over a fanbase that will adore anything with the name Fire Emblem on it. I know it's probably not a big enough portion to actually affect sales, but imagine how dull this series would become if all Intelligent Systems did was repackage the same things because the fanbase enjoyed those same things. Imagine like 10 games with Lucina or Lyn as Hector, or Lyn or Hector as the main character, because that's what the majority wants. That sounds pretty boring, doesn't it? And if you feel like your favorite FE game is getting singled out, let me run this list of criticisms for every game by you. Pretty much every fan will agree to this. FE1 is like clunky and outdated, FE2 is clunky and outdated, and the hit rates are way too low because of floor tiles giving 20 avoid for some reason. FE3 is still kind of clunky and dismounting is kind of annoying. FE4 maps are too large with too much walking through empty space while nothing is going on. FE5 is too cryptic and Nintendo hard with its warp tiles, like it's really hard to play blindly. FE6 weapon hit rates are too low, the difficulty is too front loaded, and most of its core ideas are basically taken from FE1. FE7 has too many defend maps with very little to do. FE8 Seth is way too strong. FE9 has, it's way too easy and the forced map animations take forever and a half. FE10 also has those long map animations, in fact I think they're even worse. But you only see them on your first playthrough, but still kind of dumb that you can't turn them off. And it also underdevelops a lot of the cast, especially the FE10 exclusive characters. FE11 animations look really dull, and on Hard 5, some of the enemies, especially bosses, they're power creeped way too hard. FE12 has an avatar character that screws up a story that was totally fine before. FE13 reduces a lot of characters to anime tropes, and pair-up is completely overpowered. FE14 forces you to buy DLC to get the full story, and some characters are pure fanservice and the plot is downright silly. FE15 Echoes didn't update FE2's map design or the part where floor tiles make everyone unable to hit the broadside of the barn, and as a result the gameplay experience is pretty bleh. These are totally fair, like the latest game in the series, Warriors, also gets flack for some of its aspects, like the fact that a lot of characters are clones or the very poor communication from the developer. Remember that too many swords comment they made, followed by the reveal of 2 original characters with swords? And the part where they said they were going to focus on 3 games, only to over-represent 2 of them, and then add in Lyn and Celica, 2 sword-wielding characters from outside those 3 games, yeah, that deserves a bit of scrutiny. Not a full-blown boycott or anything, but it looks pretty bad on their part. Now those problems, they don't make Warriors a bad game. A friend of mine bought Warriors about a week ago, and we've been playing through it, really enjoying ourselves. It's fun to play, even though the story is completely devoid of effort. I actually found myself liking to play as some Awakening and even Fates characters, even though I really dislike Fates as a Fire Emblem game, and I don't really have any kind of connection to the Fates characters in that game. I still kind of enjoy playing as them. So, long story short, you can be a fan of and enjoy this franchise and still be very critical of it. I wouldn't have it any other way. Like I said at the start, all this is just my opinion, so what do you think? Do you think the FE fanbase is too negative? Do you think the criticism is warranted? Let me know, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Bye!